roll your blunts with more chiba. This is how the East Coast rocks. This is how Base One rocks. This is how the East Coast rocks. This is how NJ rocks. This is how Base One rocks.
Once a label is on something, it becomes an it, like it's no longer alive. It's like a loss of vision, or some dark impression, or a black spot on your eye. If it's up to you, my little sweet babu, through the shouting and the fever, think of life as queer. Think of it, my dear, locked in the fancy tone. From here there is no missing. Baby's got it made, but it's not what the life's about. What is imagination may become a fact if we think of it that way. If you want to know, I could tell you now. Or if you make it through somehow, or is it best to keep on fall to sleep? It isn't looking very good to me from here. He's distressed and I forget. I don't wanna know 'cause I forget. He's distressed and I forget. I don't wanna know 'cause I forget. He's distressed and I forget. I don't wanna know 'cause I forget. He's distressed and I forget. I don't wanna know. I don't wanna know.
What do New York couples fight about? But this gonna work
Baby's got the
out.
bed sheet
How do
that was under you
New
when your
York
time in the life expires.
couples fight it out? But these couples fight
Keeps it in the
about.
closet,
What do
keeps it to herself.
New
She should throw
York
the damn thing out.
couples fight about? But this gonna work
Why should you
out.
continue
How do
to shake it off
New
with your
York
writings on the wall?
couples fight it out? What these couples fight
You can make it hard
about.
to be in the shouting you will see. Or is it best to change the world you're keeping down again? Hey, he's distressed and I forget. I don't wanna know 'cause I forget. He's distressed and I forget. I don't wanna know 'cause I forget. He's distressed and I forget. I don't wanna know 'cause I forget. He's distressed and I forget. I don't wanna know. I don't wanna know. Such is the sound of sorry.
grips that could hold you down.
Just when things were looking up, you act just like a horse at your back.
Everything was simple, but the body's warm, like a life spread on the ground.
Loud and pink and general, the kitchen sink funeral.
Every loving other, don't you fade on me, like a bomb that's about to blow.
Often we will overlook the things that make it under
We can make it hard, or we could take the world apart. Or you'd never be that sure of the simple thing that makes you want to cry again. Hey, is this just and I forget? I don't wanna know 'cause I forget. Is this just and I forget? I don't wanna know 'cause I forget. Is this just and I forget? I don't wanna know 'cause I forget. Is this just and I forget? I don't wanna know. I don't wanna know. Is this just and I forget? I don't wanna know 'cause I forget. Is this just and I forget? I don't wanna know. I don't wanna know. Is this just and I forget? I don't wanna know 'cause I forget. Is this just and I forget? I don't wanna know. I don't wanna know.
using your mind. Imagine our skin joined at the hip, joined from within. By using your eyes, the freeze in my frame. Watching our clothes burst into flames. Undress me now, you know how. Using your eyes now. Undress me now, you know how. Using your mind, using your mind.
days of marriage, everything was just great. But after 2 kids and the weight gain factors, fact is, now she's completely unattractive. Look, fat chicks, I don't mean to sound rude. I tell her nice, hit the gym and don't eat so much food. But no,
You're shallow, you need to run the course of unconditional love and so forth.
but how? If desire's not there, that's just a layman. Divorce is child support, alimony payments. My unhappiness I doubt discouraged, so hurry for an easier way out this marriage. Meanwhile, my secretary June well groomed.
When you gonna leave your
I
wife?
tell her soon, mommy, soon I assume. For my destiny is blue. Interestingly, the only thing left for me to do is to kill her.
What a surprise, oh, open your eyes, oh, woman advisor.
I'm gonna have to kill her.
Masters, laws, switching bosses, divorces.
Send that ass right to the morgue and kill her.
What a surprise, oh, open your eyes, oh, woman advisor.
I'm gonna have to kill her.
Masters, laws, switching bosses, divorces.
Send that ass right to the morgue. My plans against all shenanigans kinda ran thin, knowing nothing about poisoning, and I can't swim. Bad intentions pumping, might as well become numb. Cut her lungs or the obvious robbery gone wrong, but the catch is, do I have the nerve to dispatch this? Who could I get to help me murder this fat chick? Guess I have to play a dude Robin on Wednesday, the day she usually goes food shopping. Anyway, long story short, hit the side of a Chrysler, sent it clean over the divider. You bastard, she said, as the wreck went tumbling down the hill. I thought she has to be dead. Later on, get a call, Lieutenant O'Rourke, leaping like a frog. We need you at the morgue. So I selfishly pursued. Boo-hoo, there was nothing else left for me to do. I had to kill her.
What a surprise, oh, open your eyes, oh, woman advisor.
Come on, y'all, you know I had to kill her.
Masters, laws, switching bosses, divorces.
Send that ass right to the morgue and killed her.
What a surprise, oh, open your eyes, oh, woman advisor.
I had to kill her.
Masters, laws, switching bosses, divorces.
Send that ass right to the morgue. So you mean to tell me, officer, you don't have no clue who did this hit and run?
No, sir, we don't have no clues right
This is
now.
terrible. What am I gonna tell the kids?
Pull yourself together, sir.
I'm so broken up inside. I just can't believe this.
I understand.
Catch the person who did this,
We're gonna try, sir.
please. Screaming, who done took my heart? I get shooken up a lot at the funeral, though everyone was looking at me odd, like I did it, like I was the reason my mate slain. Murmuring, I heard he was displeased with her weight gain. While my secretary, sort of a sexy blonde, can't cook. All she does is order from restaurants.
All of the sex you
I
want?
doubt could address clothes not washed proper and house look a mess. And talking to detectives that was waiting outside, how I took a long lunch break, day the wife died. I darn near turned pale, and because of betrayal, they indicted me, gave me an impossible bail. Good fortune to anyone admiring the raw tent. Moral of the story is, desire is important. So watch your weight, it'll keep your mate smitten, it's a given. Though looking back, I realize I didn't have to kill her.
What a surprise, oh, open your eyes, oh, woman advisor.
I didn't have to kill her.
Masters, laws, switching bosses, divorces.
Send that ass right to the morgue and killed her.
What a surprise, oh, open your eyes, oh, woman advisor.
I didn't have to kill her.
Masters, laws, switching bosses, divorces.
Send that ass right to the morgue. Well, there you have it. Keep fit trim, keep your marriages healthy. You know what I mean? Small message from More Chiba and Slick Rick the Ruler.
Mesdames et messieurs, si vous le voulez bien, nous allons démarrer nos travaux de la matinée pour cet événement spécial consacré au lancement du réseau des Delivery Units africains.
What is the delivery unit? What is its purpose? So this morning we'll have time to come back to that with eminent experts hailing from 13 African countries and worldwide. But first of all, we would like to thank you for your presence for this important event. We also wish to thank you for your interest in this issue of delivery units, which is related to challenges of economic transformation that our countries are going through. Without further ado, we're going to start with a 6-minute film which will set the tone, coming back on the basics. What is the delivery unit? What is its purpose? And we also provide concrete examples of, we got in African countries. Let's start with this film.
Africa is in a hurry to transform itself. We need to scale our delivery, improve our speed.
Governments no longer have the luxury of 20, 30 years to make simple promises come true.
Il y a eu, dans le passé, des politiques qui souvent ont péché par le fait que la mise en œuvre effective n'était pas toujours évidente.
A delivery unit is a unit within the core of government, generally around either the presidency or the prime minister's office, set up to track, monitor, and report on delivery of development services.
The Presidential Delivery Unit is the sharp end of the spear. It is what is used to open the doors and make sure they stay open so that development can take place.
Bureau opérationnel de suivi, une structure qui est dans une logique de rupture dans l'architecture organisationnelle du pays, une rupture dans la nécessité de mettre en œuvre de façon adéquate le plan Sénégal émergent.
Nous avons acquis une formation avec les normes standards, les normes internationales. Ce travail va nous permettre d'améliorer nos conditions de vie et d'épargner quelque chose pour le futur.
Nous avons pu résoudre tous les problèmes de façon rapide, que ce soit des problèmes sur les facteurs de production, la disponibilité de l'eau, de l'électricité, de la main-d'œuvre et autres, mais également nous avons pu, grâce au bureau opérationnel de suivi, réaliser le projet en un temps record.
Le projet de parc de technologie numérique est appelé à être le réceptacle final de l'ensemble des activités de création de valeur technologique au niveau du Sénégal. Le boss a le mandat de reporter au président de la République l'ensemble des difficultés. Et c'est un plaidoyer qui est mené à chaque conseil des ministres sur l'ensemble des projets structurants, dont le nôtre. Donc c'est un élément qui permet d'avoir des décisions qui arrivent plus vite et donc de gagner du temps dans la réalisation des objectifs qui nous sont assignés.
President Kenyatta has set for the country a medium-term plan that is dubbed as the Big Four. And the Big Four really is a sub-item of our Vision 2030.
The standard gauge railway
is the biggest single infrastructure project that have been done in this country, in the history of this country. Double the safety, double the comfort, half the time, half the cost. This project has been transformational.
We monitor the movement of trains with over 4,000 passengers in a given day. Dispatching center is the brain of the whole railway technology. Here we use the CTC system, which is one of the most advanced railway technology operation systems that we have in the world.
We are in one of the villages where Kenya Power started rural electrification under the Last Mile project in the year 2013. The intention was to increase electrification from 35% to 85%. Right now, we are at 70%. The impact has been great.
Yes, since we got electricity, life has been cheaper because this area is arid and it is fertile. It is only lacks water, and we are able to irrigate it so easily with electric pumps, which are cheaper than fuel pumps.
Delivery is quickly becoming a science. Time is right for it to be cascaded and adopted by a lot more of our African countries.
Delivery is critical. Delivery matters, and that's why we're investing substantially to support delivery in Kenya and several other countries. And this is an area where we'll see growth through the bank and its development partners.
Merci.
Thank you. After this film on the role of the delivery unit, we're going to get deeper into this topic with a panel that will discuss the role and responsibility and the role of the delivery unit may play in investment for economic transformation. Without further ado, I will call Mr. Almazi Manager of the delivery unit in the African Development Bank. He will be acting as facilitator for this panel. Thank you. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to this Day 3 of the International Conference on the Emergence of Africa, which is being hosted by the town of Diamniadio, which is under construction. You were able to appreciate some images in the film that have just been projected. And we have the major legitimate aspiration of transformation and emergence of Senegal. Arman Zenama is my name. I'm responsible for delivery and performance in the African Development Bank, and I have the privilege to facilitate this discussion, which will be on the delivery units. Through this film, you were able to see some elements on this concept of delivery units. But now we need to further this issue to better understand what a delivery unit is working, how it operates, what are the criteria for the success of a delivery unit in our continent, given its context. To deepen this issue, we have gathered a top-notch panel. Let me ask each of the panel members to join me on the presidium.
Chris Jala. He's the CEO of the Performance and Management and Delivery Unit of Malaysia, Pemandu, A big round of applause. Welcome, Mr. Jala. We're very honored to have you on this panel, and you know you've traveled a long way to come here. So warm welcome to the country of the Teranga. Our second panelist is Mr. Nzioka Waita. He is the Chief of Staff of the President of the Republic of Kenya and the head of the President Delivery Unit. Warm welcome to you, Mr. Waita.
Our third panelist is Malik Nachaba. Nachaba is advisor to the President of the Republic of Togo and coordinator of the Presidential Unit for Execution and Monitoring. Thank you and welcome. We have a fourth panelist, Johannes Daniel. He is a special advisor to the President of the Republic of Benin and coordinator of the Analysis and Investigation Bureau. Welcome, Mr. Daniel.
J'invite Monsieur Ibrahima Ouad, qui est notre hôte à cet événement aujourd'hui, à nous rejoindre au panel. Monsieur Ouad est le directeur général du bureau de suivi du plan Sénégal émergent, BOSS. Bienvenue, Monsieur Ouad. Okay, so I'd like to kick off this discussion with Mr. Waita, if you allow me. Oh, but first, let's start with the keynote address by Mr. Jala, who will give us the background and the experience of Pemandu. Please, Mr. Jala.
Thank you. I have quite a lot of slides, but I'm not going to take you through it. Normally, it will take me 1 hour to do it, but I will do it in 20 minutes. Let me see how this works. It's stuck. Can someone assist us with the technology? Move the slide deck, please. Okay. In Malaysia, we started off since independence in 1957, and we grew very rapidly as a low-income country. Very, very fast. We used to grow at double-digit GDP growth until the year 2000. In the year 2000 to 2009, we got stuck in the middle-income trap. We didn't know how to move. We tried many different things, and things didn't work. I worked for Shell for 23 years in London and in Holland. I was an oil man. And one fine day, I got a call from the Prime Minister. He said, I would like you to come and help me to begin a new journey, set up a delivery unit. So in 2009, I then became a minister in the cabinet, and I was the head of the delivery unit. We developed an 8-step, we call it the BFR process. This is big, fast result. In the video, you saw a big comment that people are not waiting. People expect Africa to run quickly, to get results. So it needs to be big, it needs to be fast. Let me quickly run through some of the achievements very quickly. In the last 7 years since we started the program with the delivery unit involved in it, we were able to increase our gross national income by 33%. We are now a high middle income country. Our investment grew by double digit, 11%. Before the delivery unit was there, our private investment grew at a rate of 5.7%. After we set up the delivery unit, annually private investment grew by 11%. And we created 2.6 million jobs for a population of 29 million people. In 7 years, if you can create 2.6 million jobs, that's very good. And we are now no longer dependent on oil because we diversified the economy. We only depend 14% on oil. The remaining is on other sectors. We have reduced poverty. Absolute poverty now is standing at 0.4%. We managed to reduce crime from 40% in the year 2010 right up to today by 50%. A huge reduction in crime. The World Bank's Ease of Doing Business, we now placed number 15. Last year, we're better than Finland, better than Canada, Switzerland, Australia, Germany, Japan, and Israel. The IMD talent ranking put Malaysia as number 22, ahead of the UK, France, and Japan. Our education system, we have now been able to increase our numeracy rate up to 96% from originally 60%. We built 6,000 kilometers of rural roads. 6,000 kilometers of rural roads is the distance between Kuala Lumpur to Moscow. 2.9 million people, we got them out from poverty line because we introduced minimum wage. We gave cash every month for 7 million people as we removed subsidy. How did we do it? So when I joined, we had a long look at the various models of delivery unit. In 2009, I had the privilege to study how they did in the UK, our own experience in Malaysia. We did our own equivalent of delivery unit before I joined, and some other countries too. This is what we found. There are two types of delivery unit. I want to be quite provocative here, because if we are not provocative, we will not learn. The first type of delivery unit is a delivery unit that introduce modern tools, KPIs, dashboard, monitoring, annual reviews, performance assessment, and reporting. But this type of delivery unit does not introduce a new way of working. And this type of delivery unit does not work with the government to develop a new transformation program. If you don't have a new transformation program, this delivery unit, which introduce all the bells and whistles, all the tools, modern tools, is going to be a mere monitoring postman. You are just taking postman data from the ministries and putting in a system called a monitoring system, and then everybody is called self-aggrandizement. You're very happy because you all tick in the box, but no transformational impact is taking place in the country. So some of you will recognize some of this in some of the things you do, but there is another type of delivery unit that we saw. The delivery unit that introduced the same modern tools, the KPIs, the dashboard, the monitoring systems, the annual appraisal, the performance appraisal, the reporting, and on top of that, they introduced an entirely new way of working. We call that in Malaysia the 8-step BFR process, 8-step big fast result process. This type of delivery unit also work with the government to introduce a new transformational program. We call it the Economic Transformation Program and the Government Transformation Program. Without these two second elements, you're going to have the first type of delivery unit. So when we set up to form Pemandu in 2009, we were very clear we do not want to be the first type. We want to be the second type. Let me describe. When you set up a delivery unit, this slide is very, very, very important, ladies and gentlemen. Without transformational leadership, forget it. If your president and your prime minister and the head of the delivery unit do not behave in a transformational way in leadership, without leadership, ladies and gentlemen, delivery unit will fail. I'm not going to go through the details of what is meant by transformational leadership. These are the new way of working. Let me dwell on this now. My team and I in Pemandu, we believe without the full monte of the 8-step process, you're not going to succeed, because this is the new way of working. So the delivery unit has to introduce an equivalent of a new way of working. Step one, get the whole cabinet in the room for a workshop, including the president, the prime minister, all cabinet ministers. What do they do in the room for the whole day? To agree the key national priorities. You know, someone asked me the question this morning, what is the most challenging thing that you face when you're head of delivery unit? He said, I will surprise you by my answer. Getting leaders in the country to focus on a few important things. Because politicians, they like to do everything. They want to say yes to everything. But you know, countries do not have money to do everything. You have to fix a few things and do them well. You know what Singapore has done as a country? Only one thing. Focus on becoming a hub, logistics hub, finance hub. No manufacturing. Don't do anything else. That's why they succeed. If you're an athlete, you want to win an Olympic Games, if you want to compete in 10 disciplines, you will never become a champion. You got to pick one or two. This is a big problem of leaders. So the workshop is the key thing to get everybody to say, yes, I am going to focus on these because these are very important for my country. When you have agreed the priorities, by the way, you know what they say? Oh, Idris, it's very easy. We don't need the workshop. We have a 5-year plan. It's all written in the 5-year plan. But you know what I always tell them? Can I look at your annual budget to check whether your budget reflects the plan, your 5-year plan? I guarantee you, ladies and gentlemen, your annual budgets do not reflect your annual plan because there's no prioritization. Next, let's suppose the cabinet have agreed the 5 or the 6 priorities for the nation. Then you gather the best and the brightest people in government, from civil service, the agencies. If it's to do with the economy, bring the private sector, lock them in the room. We call it labs. Laboratories is if you have a tourism sector that you want to work on, bring the hoteliers inside the room, bring the park owners inside the room, bring the airline people in the room, bring the immigration people in the room, put them together in the room for 6 weeks full time. Tell them, together with the government, what are we going to do to increase tourist arrival and tourist receipt? Sit down and work it out in detail. Do the analysis, every little thing you need to do them in 6 weeks. That is what a lab is about. And the motto of the lab, ladies and gentlemen, is Hotel California. You can check out any time you like, but you can never leave. You stay there until you work out the details. When we finish that, then we go into the next step. But before that, let me share what happened in Malaysia. In 2010, we gathered all the sectors inside the room. We locked them there together with the government. 131 big projects were agreed. The total investment that was committed by the private sector in that lab was $406 billion, creating 3.3 million jobs. Huge. Exactly in the year 2014, Bloomberg had put me on the top 10 most influential policy makers in the world. So I went to Bloomberg and asked them, why did you put my name there and why not Obama? They said, Obama has authority. You have zero authority. How did you manage to get the private sector to commit $406 billion of investments in your country without authority? That's what they call influence. Interestingly enough, we helped Oman government. We ran the labs in Oman 6 weeks. They call it Tanfeed program. 121 projects in 6 weeks. Total investment committed by the private sector is $42 billion. And you can see the number of jobs, 119,000 jobs. And we had also ran the labs together with the Nigerian government. One of the key players here, Mr. Folarin, he's in the room. 133 projects, $23 billion was committed by the private sector in those those 133 projects, concrete projects. If you want to know example, I give you one simple example. There was one Nigerian businessman. He owns a shoe factory. For 2 years, this man wanted to build another factory. He has the land. He knows how to do it because he already, for 15 years, he's been operating a manufacturing plant, manufacturing shoes. But he could not build his second plant. Why? Because the land is agricultural land. He needed to do a conversion to industrial use. And these are the problems that the private sector face. So in the labs, the lab works to make sure that the relevant approval is then made by the relevant ministry in the 6 weeks so that the man can invest and then he creates 2,000 jobs. That's how you create jobs, ladies and gentlemen. You have to be real. Government do not create jobs. Government do not create wealth. It's the private sector that create wealth and create jobs. Government must make sure you create the conditions for the projects to flourish. I can give you many, many other examples. I just gave you only one. In Nigeria, there were 133. In Senegal, my good friend Ibrahima Wade, he really liked this approach, but he wanted to pilot it. So we piloted it in the very simple project called the South Agropole, focused only on 2 things. I like his approach because he's very focused on mangoes and cashew nuts. I believe the best mangoes in the world come from this country. They believe it too. So what they did was, thank you, we got the private sector in the room, we got the government inside the room, the governors, even the banks were involved in it. In 6 weeks, 26 projects were prioritized and agreed. The total private sector investment was worth $180 million US. I think the number of jobs you can see there as well. And the total production of mangoes is also 66,000 tons. You can see already in the pilot project, it was very, very concrete. I can give an example. St. Lucia, we just came back from a small island in the Caribbean. We did the same thing with the Prime Minister, and it's huge numbers as well for a small country. In 6 weeks, 1.4 billion commitment by the private sector, 61 projects. Now, that is only step 2. Most people like to run labs and stop there. Ladies and gentlemen, that's no good. Because if you run labs and you stop there, nothing will happen. You need to move to step 3, budgets, budgets, budgets. Many people run the labs, but they don't approve the budget for the lab. In Malaysia, we say, a plan without a budget is only a draft. Do not publish a plan that is a draft. So it is very important to make sure that when you finish that, every project that is there, you need to get the budgets approved. What I mentioned here, typically when we run the labs, more than 90% of the investment is from the private sector. Only about 10% is coming from government. But the government must put money where their mouth is, based on the 10%. For this project, I approve that. For this, I approve this. That is how it works. Next chart, I have to run very rapidly. Communicate. Tell the public what you intend to do. Produce a roadmap. Gather everybody. This is what happened in Malaysia. So many people turn up there. 13,000 people came to our open day on ETP. Then this is what happened in Tanzania. We ran the labs in Tanzania. That's President Kikwete. And this is Nigeria. We also had a communication program. We brought the whole public to come into the event in Abuja. Step number 5, to set up the delivery unit. What do you do in the delivery unit? You must have a structure. In Malaysia, PEMANDU stands for Performance Management and Delivery Unit. I became the CEO at the same time a minister and reporting to the Prime Minister. We made sure all the national priorities has a lead minister that is held accountable to it. The PEMANDU unit was made up of half people from the civil service, the other half from private sector, from outside the civil service. We wanted a hybrid organization. We wanted the civil service to know how the system internally works, but we want fresh ideas from outside. And we have a problem-solving escalation system. Every week, we monitor progress on the dashboard. And if things are red color, we then have to go and resolve it. If it is not resolved within 14 days, it gets escalated to the steering committee meeting, of which the minister must chair it. If within 30 days it cannot be resolved, the prime minister will chair a meeting to solve the problem. If people still struggle to resolve this, after 6 months, we call a Putrajaya Inquisition. In the Putrajaya Inquisition, we put the prime minister there, the key ministers in the room. If a problem has not been resolved for a long time, we invite the person who is the stumbling block to that problem to come and explain why he or she is a stumbling block. By name, do you know what happened? 70% of the problem is solved before the meeting, because nobody wants to go out there and do that. I give you one little story. We were introducing a minimum wage. We had somebody within the Attorney General Chamber that took more than 6 months to draft a minimum wage law, which is only 4 pages. All the minimum wage laws in the world look the same. It only takes you 5 minutes to take one minimum wage from the other country, blanco the name of that country, and put Malaysia there. You don't need 6 months. They look the same. So we invited this person to stand in front of the Inquisition and answer, why did it take, in fact, it's a lady, this one, her, 6 months to blanco the name and put Malaysia there. I can tell you, the next morning the law was finished. And that's why we call it Inquisition, because we have to inquire the person who is blocking it. So we don't do that as often, but that's the Prime Minister loves that activity. But you need problem-solving mechanism. Number 6, very, very important step. Monitor, do it, and solve problem. We have KPIs every week, dashboard. I'm sure you all know about this, and I'm not going to say a lot of this because we all do this. The delivery unit that fail also do this. The delivery unit that succeed also do this. The difference is one unit has a program, the other one unit does not have a transformational program and a new way of working. Appraisal. This, every year we need to have appraisal. We have a prime minister sitting together with every minister, doing a report card for every minister. And then finally, at the end of the year, the report card of the ministers is published onto the internet. Then you will know which minister is number 1. His score is there, number 86% perhaps. And the minister who is the worst performing minister is also there with his photograph. On the internet, all the promises he made, the list of the things that he successfully implemented is there. The list of things he did not succeed in doing is also onto the internet. This is what we mean by transparency, by name, ladies and gentlemen, not by department. That's how you get people to behave differently. These are the 8 steps that I talked about. I would say that the methodology that we have started in Malaysia has been implemented in parts, not all of the 8 steps, some of the 8 steps in some of these countries. You can see Trinidad and Tobago, St. Lucia, they have run up to the labs in Senegal, Nigeria, but not all of them have done the 8 steps. They've done some of the 8 steps. Our experience in Malaysia is that if you cherry pick, you will not get the optimum outcome. No cherry picking. You got to go and do the full antibiotics dose. If you take antibiotics, if the doctor says take it in 14 days, if you take it only in 2, then you have a problem. So ladies and gentlemen, I want to conclude by saying, just run out of time now. If you want to be a leader in your country to make Africa emerge, you must set up to do all the 8 steps. Workshop for the leaders, labs to make sure you get the detailed investments and the projects sorted out, budget approval, communicate to the public, implementing mechanism in the delivery unit, monitor and solve problem recursively, do appraisal and annual report. Let me conclude by saying, finally, without 2 ingredients, you will fail. And with those 2 ingredients, you will succeed. Number 1, you set up a new way of working, which I described, which is the 8th step. But you require, number 2, leadership. Without the leadership of the government, it will not succeed. The opposite side is if you have the right leadership and you have a new way of working, running through it, all the 8-step process, then you will succeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jala, for sharing these critical insights and experience on the big fat results, its achievements, its methodology, and the outcomes of it. Very rich experience. I would like us, in the course of this conversation, to explore how this experience can be replicated and contextualized, adapted for the continent. And I'm hoping our participants here will help us share a bit their insights on how things are happening in their respective countries. So let me start with Mr. Waita. At the center of the mandate of a delivery unit is the objective of instilling a sense of urgency for delivery, a results culture, a delivery mindset across government entities. Could you share a bit your experience in how you make this happen, how you are driving that change in mindset and in culture?
Thank you, Ahmad. Kenya has probably a similar set of circumstances to many African countries. One is that the average age of the public service is probably in the mid-50s to 60s. The average age of the population is below 20 years of age. So there's a big delta in terms of expectations versus the deliveries. So coming on the backdrop of a public service that has had a luxury of working to those medium-term plans at their own pace and delivering on government commitments at their own pace, those days are gone. Because now what you have is a very youthful population, a youthful population that is very influential in getting leaders in and out of power. So at the end of the day, everybody here, whether you're working in the Prime Minister's office or a president's office, you are at the point of inflection between the politics and the bureaucracy. So on the one hand, the bureaucracy does not exist to serve itself. The bureaucracy exists to serve a political end. So if the president has been elected into office on the back of commitments and promises, the expectation from those who have voted is that those commitments and promises will be attained. Now, for a president, you are a political, you are in transit because you have the government for a period of time. The bureaucracy, on the other hand, is institutional and has been there before you, and you will leave it there as well. So what you find is that there has to be an alignment between the sense of urgency that the political leadership has to stay relevant, to stay important, and to be able to stay in power, most importantly, and the bureaucracy to function optimally without grinding to a halt. And the public service is a very delicate machine. If you mess it up and it doesn't work, everything stops and you can't move it. Now, one of the most difficult lessons for us in the delivery has been finding that sweet spot. How do you get things to move? And the context is everything. And to what Idris indicated is you must know to granular detail where the problem is. It's not enough to say that a road has been delayed because of one agency refusing to do one thing or another. You must find out if this road is not moving here because the power company and the water company have refused to relocate their infrastructure. You must find out on whose table does that decision sit. Call them and ask them, why aren't you doing this? And that call should only be done once. Because if it doesn't move, you must be able to isolate this problem and deal with it. Now, it's very easy to say that. If you are sitting in the president's seat, how do you get line of sight into a parastatal? You must know your minister very well. You must know your bureaucrats very well. You must know the agency CEOs, the boards, the members, the senior management. That line of sight requires a very cohesive machine that works. So your delivery function is not even just so much about project management. It's also just about people and very deep understanding of the organizations that you're working with. So if you were to ask me, my first few years in office was spent just getting to know people. And once I understood who does what, then it became a lot easier to pinpoint where the trouble spots are and hopefully not get to a point where you need to have that inquisition. Because now that people know that you know them by name and you know by function, it completely changes their perception. They are no longer a faceless, nameless bureaucrat. Your name is so-and-so, you are the manager in charge of relocation in the energy parastatal. Your job is to do this from here. You are employed on this date to do this specific thing. If you don't do it, this is the consequence of you not doing that thing. Now, that takes a lot of coordination.
Thank you. Thank you very much for these lessons. And some interesting lessons about the importance of knowing people, getting to that granular understanding of what the issue are, the bottlenecks, and trying to resolve it. Very, very good, very interesting. Nous allons maintenant nous tourner vers Monsieur.
Now we're going to turn to Mr. Ibrahim Wad, still on this issue of the mindset, which is necessary in order to build this cohesion for the case of Senegal around the emerging Senegal Plan PSC. How can we actually build this dynamic this positive attitude towards results? How can we succeed in actually building the mindset, in changing the mindset? I thank you, Amran. I'm tempted to say that when we listen to leaders so aspiring to run their country, this is a lot of ambition. As far as I'm concerned, I do not think that there was a leader asking to rule his country. He's ruling and who's not feeling like succeeding. It seems to me that is a paradox. We need to dispel. Often I think
awareness about this willingness of succeeding, and also to show the destiny of countries rests with those leaders in those countries. But when we look at the histories of development policies in Africa, for a long time there was this hiatus, this feeling to move forward, and this lack of in the concretization. When the emerging Senegal plan was thought and launched by President Macky Sall, one of the problems for him was how we will be able to fulfill such ambition. I must remember that by the time the plan was designed, there was a work of identification, benchmarking, reflection. Our Malaysian friends wanted to see how those processes were thought and implemented. So what Idris was saying about the need to have a leadership and to focus on priority. So as a matter of fact, that was a choice made by President Macky Sall to say the plan is broad. We have the priority action plan that was more over 700 projects, but how can we focus on a set of priorities? That was the rationale behind the 27 flagship programs and 17 flagship reforms. We had to combining with this tool that is the delivery unit, the monitoring operational office, who all set of arrangement behind the BOS. We can see an arrangement of an administration which is functional and which is actually different from the classical administration. How this transformation idea is feeding itself into the system. After 5 years, there are new words and concepts that come to my mind. The concept of delivery, the concept of accountability, focus. These are new terms that our administrative culture in Senegal didn't know about. We were in an administration of implementation, resource mobilization, execution, reporting, to move towards the next budget. And we did not have a clearly identified challenge. We didn't have a clear priorities and focus. I totally agree with the approach developed by Idris, and which is being actually taught in Senegal. The delivery unit arrangement here has achieved a lot. First of all, it allowed us to be aware that we can move faster in project implementation and also implementation of reforms. Let me give you a few examples. With our partners, either on the state budget or on the cooperation budget, we were used to implementing projects, for instance, road projects. But can you imagine, those are road projects, while they were negotiated, those projects would take between 5 to 10 years for the implementation. Just in the preparatory condition for starting, between the current conditions, the procurement conditions, so liberation of the priorities. One of the delivery units was to overcome the constraint. This is the problem solving Idris talked about earlier on. Just to provide a few landmarks. How did we move to an average problem resolution time from 1 year to 3 months? When you take the overall matrix, depending on the nature of the problem, we have an ambition and a challenge that is to bring it down to 30 days. Another constraint, when we look at the environment of problems that block project implementation, we realize that they were related to lands, to environmental clearances, to problems very simple related to access to funding, very simple things. So when you look at the thing after 5 years, those are one of the among problems addressed. All issues related to environmental clearances were fully addressed. And today, the problem-solving system, the overall project implementation system does not need anymore the resolution, problem resolution system to address the environmental clearance, because the administration is addressing it. That means we are at the beginning of transformation. And to conclude, I cannot agree more with Idris's remarks. How can we move from the first generation of delivery unit, that was the case of Senegal, to the second generation of delivery unit? And that is one of the major challenges posed to Senegal. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that experience sharing. The journey, the operational monitoring office of the emerging plan talked about. Now we're going to get back to the experience that in the collaboration that you had with Beymandu on the delivery lab, to try and figure out how things went about. It required a lot of resources, a lot of time, and it would be important to share the experience with the audience and various partners around this panel. We may now move on to Togo. Mr. Natcheba, the Beymandu model provide an interesting success stories. There are some aspects that can be replicated, as we said earlier on. Others that are less transposable, adaptable to the African continent. So in the various avenues that you are exploring in developing a delivery unit, what are the reflection, the thoughts that you have already on the issues and the various options that you're exploring, and also the experience that you have garnered so far? Could you actually share with us the reflection and the journey of the Togo delivery unit? Thank you, Armand. Indeed, I think there was a need for cultural adaptation of the delivery unit and the way they were set up. But there are also some crucial elements which do tally, whatever the country or the common environment. The first one that was raised in the very first panel was the sophistication coming with delivery units. Idris talked about it. We continuously need to relate the strategic vision, operational issues, and the actions that we are conducting in order to continually adjust what is being done on the ground. In the videos, we show that there was some really daily issues daily units should work on, not only by having expertise on everything, but by being able on a very short notice to address issues. And for that, we need to have a sophistication dimension, ability to connect the major policy and the operational aspect on a daily basis. As the Chief of Staff said earlier on, the gentleman who's on the field who need actually to set a cable for the road to be built. He needs to be aware that the government is having an eye on him. That will allow the gentleman the next day, when he needs to set the cable, he's not going to say, I'm going to eat, but I'm going to set the cable, because right from the top, people are watching me. That's what we're doing on a daily basis. And I think this is a constant of all delivery units. And secondly, this is something that we refer to in Togo, the privacy with people driving the project. We have a fledgling delivery unit. We have only 1 year. We are just 1 year old. We have worked a lot, and the Chief of Staff said earlier on, we worked towards creating a privacy, the fact of finding out the constraint of people working on the ground. And this privacy, it allows to generate and complicity. And we are working a lot on the issue with the team, because we need to mobilize teams on the issue to avoid falling in the reverse effects. That means often when we are delivery units, often we domesticate the issues that operational unit found on the ground. We need actually to create the proximity we need to be close enough with the field players and be able to drive them towards getting the results that are set to ourselves. And finally, the third element I would like to draw your attention. This is the credibility of whatever we may be doing. The delivery unit involves a lot of data, a lot of information, reporting for the public, for the authority, often not the same level of reporting, because where there is a political reporting. So this reporting should be credible. And we are working a lot to make sure that the documentation and the value of the data that we share are those that are actually ascertained on the ground. Because when you're credible, your word has an influence, is meaningful, particularly in our cultural environment, where often we lack administration that can issue data. And after some analysis, we realize that these data are not necessarily what is happening on the ground. So credibility is an element that may be more important in the African cultural environment. In other countries, we may have more trust in the institution, that there is this issue of confidence or trust, and often this is between us and the administration. And the more we are credible, the more they accept to help us, and they accept the figures provided by the delivery units and work with it. And this will save us a lot of time, and at the same time, it will help us to spread a different working method. Thank you so much. You said that the delivery unit is still very young in Togo, but through your intervention, so many lessons are learned, and we can also benefit from the experience sharing of other delivery units that are more advanced, more experienced, and that might be very helpful.
Now we move on to Benin. Mr. Dagnon, could you please share your experience, your reflection on the delivery unit model that you wish to put in place, or that you are putting in place in Benin? Thank you. Thank you. When in April 2006, President assumed duty, he wanted to put in place a pole of competence to help him to design his action program and ensure implementation. Then he instituted the delivery unit in April 2016, and whose role is to design and contribute to the elaboration of the program. So the action program, as you know, is driven towards economic development, social development. It's also driven towards the structural transformation of the economy, banking on the private sector. You may understand that the president was in a position to create the condition for sustainable development. So all the problems, all the projects were identified, and for the implementation of these programs, we also identify the bottlenecks, and these include the administration, on the understanding of the role the private sector should play in the economic development. Because as you know, the private sector is the only wealth creator. So the state does not create wealth. So the state actually play a facilitation role so that the private sector be an actor of development, so that it plays fully its role. So after identifying all these projects that are economic development project, feasibility studies were conducted by competent offices. The conditions for the implementation of this project were identified. Then we identified the bottlenecks for the implementation of such a project. So bottlenecks lead to reforms because we had to address these bottlenecks. So we identified 45 flagship projects in all economic sectors that are designed to lead to development. And we have 9 billion. And we also identify the conditions for implementation. We identify 77 key reforms we had to put in place, and they were on the business environment, the macroeconomic framework. If this framework is not effective, the private sector cannot implement its programs. Likewise, this government identifies sectors, and we have infrastructure, for example. If we wish to develop the industry, we need energy. It's not up to private operators to engage such action. There are some road infrastructures. We also have infrastructure for the digital. We also have some investment which actually are necessary, the intervention of private actors. In the tourism sector, for example, the state should create infrastructure for attractiveness. We need to create museums, parks, so that private operators can implement or put in place hotels to attract tourists. So all these elements were identified. As you know, the major challenge in our countries is implementation. So we also identify conditions for success. So this includes putting everyone in their role, to define the role of the administration, to also define the role of the private sector, the role of the state. In this regard, ministries actually were to develop strategies and ensure implementation, and implementing agencies were also created to manage the flagship project identified by the government. Through executing agencies, these projects were rolled out, and sectoral ministries actually stayed in their role of defining strategies. So ministries were no longer involved in implementation, because beforehand they were in implementation. In executing agencies, usually they form companies, and they have a well-established governance with specific competencies. So we were able to implement the 45 flagship projects. So reforms undertaken were also led by our bureau. And to date, I can say that the 45 flagship projects, we have completed the studies, and the implementation has started. On the 77 reforms, almost everything has been done. Reforms pertaining to the business environments are completed. There are some reforms that are yet to be completed. As I was saying, we had to create conditions for implementation. This is to separate roles, and the state cannot be involved in the implementation. The state has a facilitation role. So everything was based on the support to proffer, so that the private sector may play its role. And for that, we needed a coordination of all the actions. That this is the role of the office I'm running at the presidency. And that's why it was important, because we had to coordinate all intervention, oversee the activities of agencies. So we also did take part in the elaboration of the program, and we have a clear idea of what to put in place. And we also need to make sure that the program is implemented. With monitoring units on the ground, we also make sure that what was planned was well done. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. This is a quite ambitious program for transformation. So 45 flagship projects, 77 reforms. I think as for the emerging Senegal plan, we had 27 flagship projects. So we have ambitious programs which actually require delivery unit tailored structure to support them and have an effective monitoring.
Mr. Jala here. I think here I'd like to be a bit provocative because in your presentation you displayed, you gave us a glimpse of some of the experience that you have accumulated on the continent. So you worked with a number of these delivery units. Some have been successfully established over time. Others have come and gone. Could you share a bit your sense of what may have gone wrong? What are the critical factors of success? We've mentioned earlier leadership, very, very critical. And of course, continuity in leadership, I suppose, is a must if you want to sustain delivery units. Could you share a bit your experience of where you think things have gone wrong in some of these countries? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Aman. The one thing, critical success factor, is getting leadership to focus on a few things. That is where many things go wrong in Africa. But when you talk to them, they say, we already know. It's in the 5-year plan. But please challenge them to look at the annual budget. I can tell you the annual budget do not reflect the 5-year plan. So you have to sit with the finance minister to look at the annual budget, to rob Peter to pay Paul. That is very difficult to do. If this is a priority, and that is not a priority, you got to take money from here to put it there. That's a very difficult leadership challenge. When we ran the labs, I can tell you in Africa, fantastic. The quality of people in Africa is good as, if not better than what I've seen anywhere else. We ran labs in Moscow, by the way. We're helping the Russian governments in Moscow. We have Russian in my team now. The quality of the lab output in Africa is not worse than the ones in Malaysia. It's not worse than in Russia. In fact, some places you're better. But when you finish that step 2, where you go wrong is, again, budget is not approved. I can tell you one country, I will not mention which one. They published a report for the last 5 years in rolling it through. None of the projects, the budgets were approved. In Malaysia, we say no money, no talk. You don't talk if you don't have the money. You only say you're going to do it if you approve the budget. So that, I think, and the third success factor is, this gentleman, every one of them, they all violently agree. Relentless execution, problem solving, get down to operational detail, really know who is implementing it. These are very difficult things to do. It requires stamina. This is not a sprint. You really, really require stamina to do. And in the example I gave, one of our labs, we said in 2010, we wanted to increase our oil palm play. We said we needed for 7 years to plant 5 million trees. So we have to know which hectare, where is the land, get the approval, who is going to plant the trees, which year are these trees going to be planted. Everything must be done like that. Actually, we planted more than 5 million That is what you do. You know, oil palm in Malaysia is 6.7 million hectares. Our country total land size 33 million hectares. 20% of the whole Malaysia is oil palm. That is what I mean by focus. If you want to do it, you must not be half-hearted. You must really do it. That is why Malaysia, by the way, oil palm tree, we borrowed and we got it from Nigeria, actually. When I met the minister in Abuja, he asked me, he joked with me, can you return the oil palm tree that we gave to you? But the point was, if you want to do it, you really, really must focus on doing it. This is not a game where you play games. You really must do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Idris. So the lesson here, publish less reports and focus on execution. Very, very good. Zsoka, I'd like to, if you could share a bit on the Big Four agenda. We saw a few of your flagship projects under the Big Four. Do you have that sense of prioritization and the challenge you have in terms of resource allocation? I think this is the point Idris is making about making sure that you put your money where your mouth is and ensure that these projects and these programs are given adequate resources and focus for execution.
I think, Armand, when we conceptualized the Big Four, it was just in between the end of the elections and before inauguration. And the president was more concerned about how to create that focus, because we all told him, look, we did a lot of heavy lifting to get back into office, because we did so many things, but perhaps we did too many things. Why don't we do a few things, but really put our attention to them? And that's how we identified the universal health coverage as one priority, manufacturing and expanding specific sectors within our country, low-hanging fruit on the manufacturing front, food security and nutrition, and then looking at housing, mostly low-income and affordable housing. The biggest challenge has been, first of all, building that into what everybody understands. So in Kenya, everyone understands that there is a Vision 2030 and that you work from medium-term plan to medium-term plan. So we convinced the president, said, look, let's speak a language that the public service understands. So let's take this Big Four and put it into the medium-term plan and change the medium-term plan, because the overall vision remains the same. But this is an accelerated path that we are taking. So universal health coverage is something we hope to achieve over a longer period of time. But having gone into a devolved system of government, having understood how these services are offered, having understood how critical it is to the bulk of the population, we said, let's fast track that. Looking at housing, what are the big ticket issues around housing? Is it government balance sheet underwritten? Is it exchequer driven? No, it isn't. That's one of the best things about the housing program. It's all about policy. Make it easier for people to own homes. So change the law that makes mortgages very expensive. Change government borrowing habits to make cash more accessible to people. Change land and physical planning laws to make land more available to people. Simplify the licensing of new technologies, low-cost building technologies, all of which have been on the cards, but we've never gone the full hog and just approved these things. Why should we regulate how people build their houses and make it impossible for them to own a house because you want them to live in a Mercedes when most of the country really should be in Maruti, you know? And forgive me if you don't know those references, but I'll be happy to explain after this. And now that step and that thinking was one step. Budgetary alignment, policy alignment, and then at cabinet level, and then policy alignment for devolved functions. So healthcare and agriculture are devolved. The central government only has a policy role to play. not an implementation role. So we have to win over county governments to our way of thinking and to embrace the Big Four as theirs. That has been the work we've done for really 1 year, sitting with leaders who have their own priorities and telling them our priority should be their priority. And that has been quite some heavy lifting, but we've been very successful up until this point. Now that we have budgetary alignment for most of the things that require exchequer, next thing is really just looking at the key enablers. Macroeconomic stability. Just keeping the fiscal space present. You know the African situation, we want to achieve so much so quickly, we take so much money, but we really need to keep space for the country to remain stable. Number two is looking at security and just providing away from conventional thinking. There are 24 hours in a day. Every hour should be used. People should not stop business simply because the lights have gone off. Number three, looking at education. We've been so obsessed as a country in getting degrees, but we don't need degree holders. We have lots of degree holders walking around jobless. What we need are vocational skills. People who can fix pipes, who can weld things, who can make windows, who can make chairs. People who can make machines work at a technical level. We need more cooks and plumbers. We need less engineers. We need more technicians, because that's where we are in terms of our evolutionary path. Thirdly is really to look at infrastructure and tailor that infrastructure to the outcome that we expect. So when you build a road, that road should lead to a farming community or to a marketplace. It should be able to unlock something. That road should not just be a road that does not have any underlying consequence, because everybody wants new tarmac roads in their constituencies and in their homes. But how do we prioritize allocation of funds to mirror the aspiration that we're looking at? That has been a very tedious exercise, and I think we've done that heavy lifting now. We have a very short period, in politically speaking, to now move to implementation. But I just want to leave 3 lessons, if you don't mind, Ahmad, for the people here who are either in delivery functions or looking up to set up delivery functions. Number one, the mere existence of a delivery function is symptomatic of a failure. That the political aspiration is moving much quicker than what the public service can deliver. So you need an intermediary. It's very important for you to understand your role in delivery. You are a fixer. You are the eyes and ears of your administration. You are the person who converts a directive by your leader into an action. So it's very important. You're not the jack of all trades. So today, even if you're managing projects, you're not the infrastructure minister, you're not the energy minister. You know, those people have jobs that they're paid to do. But your job is to make sure that that job gets done. And you're able to flag it back to your leader and explain to them, this job is not being done in this particular place. The second thing is understanding at what point do you intervene if you're running a delivery function. So there's 2 sets that we have. There's a model we have taken. Number one is we get information top down. So the ministries running, the project owners will give us their information. 80% of it is accurate, or 70%. They will say, we have done this, we have done that. They tick the box, we give them all the marks, and we fill that report. But we do something else. We do bottom-up verification. We go to the project beneficiaries on the ground, and we ask them, the ministry has said that they have done this water and sanitation project in your area. What do you think? They will immediately tell you that they did it in the wrong place, or this was not done up to standard, or they haven't completed it, or there's a resettlement issue, or there's a quality or competency issue. Immediately, the gap between the information from the top and the information from the bottom, that gap is your point of intervention. And it's very important to understand so that you don't waste too much time running around. The third thing I would want to leave as a message is, after all this is done, who cares? What is it all for? if you are unable to articulate and communicate the outcomes of any administration in terms of their socio-economic development agenda, as a delivery function, you have failed. Because if the public are unaware of what has been done, if they can't feel it, if they can't see it, and they cannot associate your success to those actions, then you may miss out on your next objective. And the point I made very earlier is that a delivery function is the point of inflection between the politics and the bureaucracy. So at some point, your leader will have to go back to the politics. What does he say? Did he do it or did he not do it? Very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joka, for these critical lessons. I think gives us some interesting, very interesting takeaways for the others. Je me tourne maintenant.
Let me now turn to Ibrahima. I think there are two main issues that drew my attention on lessons drawn by Kenya, their experience of delivery units. The bottom-up verification. This verification, bottom-up verification, requires a presence on the ground. And I think for the case of Kenya, they have a recruitment process in order to roll out a number of teams, the delivery unit teams, in the various provinces where the projects are being implemented. It would be interesting to share the experience of the BOS on this. How do you carry out this verification on the ground in order to identify the gaps as far as information is concerned? And equally, communication of the success and failures. And this is critical in order to make sure of the buy-in of the population, the society in general, on the emerging Senegal plan. How people take ownership of the success and how do they understand that there are setbacks here and there? So how do you manage to actually achieve the two objectives within the BOS? Thank you. I wish to come back to a common point when we listen to Dre's and other countries, Kenya, Togo, Benin. At least we have a convergence. That is, we have the level of anchoring of delivery units. I think I shall come back to that later on. But another important aspect, and what I heard from Mr. Daniel on the implementation process, so we have different forms of the implementation of delivery unit. I realize that they are in a type of delivery unit which is in execution. As for Senegal, we are more or less in the Malaysian model. We are in the logic of delivery units that are not engaged in implementation, but which is on the execution. In this room, we have project heads. What is original about this arrangement is that for any flagship project of reform, the President of the Republic himself has appointed the person responsible for the execution and the monitoring of the reform. This is a choice which actually goes against a traditional logic. When the minister has a collaborator, this collaborator should be appointed by the minister. But that the president himself appoints a collaborator of the minister responsible within the ministerial function, this is designed to actually put the minister at ease. So project heads that are responsible for reforms have some flexibility with regard to the mandate given by the President of the Republic, and they report to the BOS. We have a reporting system that we have put in place. So you said something interesting, information reliability, the credibility of information. I think together we were able to, we are challenging project heads, we're challenging BOS teams. Before the information is given to the cabinet, it should be actually cross-checked. And then in 5 years of implementation, we have never had any information that has been challenged. So any information that have been put in the monitoring system is robust and reliable. Now on communication, I think this is critical. This is one of the weaknesses, because earlier on I was talking about successes. If we are to improve the BOS system, this is to go towards what will make information available. So this is a big challenge as part of our administrative realities. Idris did mention something. Putrajaya investigation. This is the top. This is where we should reach, what we should reach in Africa if we want to make sure that responsibility be endorsed by each and everyone. This is a big challenge in the case of Senegal, but in the next 5 years, what we identified as an evolution is first to improve on the maturation process of the project. It's as what we did with the lab. Why did we do that? Because we realized that drawing from the first lesson, many projects are suffering. The maturation of project is a problem. Public investment just should support private investment and reforms. This is the big challenge which we are working on. And I would like to finish by 3 lessons or 3 key recommendations. But before recommendation, I would like to come back on our weaknesses. The alignment between the state budget and priorities is still a challenge for us. And I think all our friends should keep in mind this key recommendation. The delivery units have a long way to go in Africa, 3 conditions. The first one, the delivery unit should be robust. It should be, on the first condition, it should be likely to be at the service of administrations, because a delivery unit which does not deliver services that will allow administrations that have the traditional aspects cannot be accepted in the ecosystem. The second thing is the reliability of information. A delivery unit which produces an information which is not reliable is a problem. Third element, which is important to me, the need to be sustainable and not just take the place of others. And this is simple. If the delivery unit, even in the communication of successes, to try to be in the place of executing agency, there will be a competition. In Senegal, what should characterize the delivery unit is the principle of a black box, in the way to collect information, in the way to process it, but in the way to actually share it in order to support the implementation of development policies. I thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Ibrahima.
Thank you so much, Ibrahima, for that sharing that experience and those key lessons that you got from that journey. So also we're going to collect some experiences from Benin and Togo, and after that we're going to move to the second step of this program, which is the launching of the African Delivery Unit network, I will ask the Deputy Director General to take over. So, Mr. Tatnachaba, would you please, in a few words, take us through what you think about the issue raised, the budgetary constraint, the issues of alignment, budgetary alignment with the priorities that are laid out in your transformation programs? What do you make of it? Do you encounter the realities, and what are the way forward? What is the way out? Thank you. It is true, to complement the picture, Togo passed a national development plan for 2018-2022 that includes 3 strategic areas and about 15 flagship programs that are consistent with the issues raised by Idris earlier on, to remain focused. Because in actual fact, because we do not have many resources, particularly in human resources, in order to focus on more projects. And the second aspect, remaining focused, is that the highest authority has little room to focus on over 20, 25 priorities, and at some point it's not working as we wish. So we have 15 flagship projects. I would like to say that I agree with the issues raised either by Ibrahim Idris or the Chief of Staff, or even by my colleague from Benin. I would like to highlight a couple of issues that will complement this aspect. This is about communication. In the film played earlier on, I hope many people realize that we understood that when the delivery unit, it should communicate on the results, but it also communicate by highlighting what they do, but it is doing by highlighting others. And also giving importance, valuing others is a success factors in their installation, because what they're doing on the ground, those are the people that are highlighted the day that we actually lay emphasis on this project. And a delivery unit that is functional is one that will highlight people, because it had to sort it out everything beforehand for everything to succeed. But you need to find the ways to move towards that communication by highlighting what people are doing, and at the same time by leading from the back in order to push things forward. And that is also important regarding the communication. And the second aspect is to share what we all agree on. I think in the philosophy and the culture of delivery, it is a culture of the daily basis and perspective. That means we get results which may be forgotten the next minute, or they may be coupled with other results. And this is something quite demanding. I think colleagues will agree with me. There is a genuine culture to be developed, but we also have this requirement to put what we are doing into perspective with our team, to say one success after the next. We're working towards getting successes. We are going through failures, which do not mean that we have failed everything. We need to keep doing on a daily basis. So we need some mental strength, and also a strong political sponsorship to allow us to restart every day, to accumulate success in order to succeed in the plans that are entrusted to us. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Mr. Daniel, earlier on you indicated that the transformation program, the strategic program of Benin, so relies a lot on the private sector to serve as a lever, particularly for funding. Could you elaborate further so that we can collect some insight from the audience? Thank you. Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to come back to an issue raised by Ibrahim to say that BIE is not in the delivery or the, so we need we're not doing the execution or implementation. For us, these are the subsidiarity principle. We created agencies responsible for implementing the 45 flagship projects of state, and those execution agencies have a governance. Our role is to help them set up governance and to ensure that the government goals are achieved through their activity implementation. We are not involved in the execution at all. Later on, we have put in place a set of arrangements to monitor the government action plan. At the same time, I would like to talk about the budgetary alignment. Every year, ministries have budget action plan to be developed. Our role after all the validation steps are encountered, Ministry of Funding, Ministry of Finance, we make sure that the government action plan is translated. Because as you know, the Benin has a presidential regime. The president will drive his programs. We need to ensure that this program is shared by all cabinet ministers. We realize that often out on the action plan developed by the ministries are not consistent, considering the budget arbitration, because we do not have enough resources. So that approach, we do take care of it to make sure that arrangements are made for the action plan to achieve its goals. That's our main role. And as I was saying earlier on, to repeat some issues raised, for us, implementation is key. And for us, there are three elements that we put in place. We have the presidential monitoring unit that are sector-wide entities outside the BAI that has technical expertise on the matter. But now we have a sectoral approach to monitor this project. And these people get to the field, see what is planned for the education, culture, health sector, whether these are implemented, just to make sure that as we plan to make this reform, is it achieved on this date? And what matters is that we have put in place an electronic monitoring platform for the government project, because as you know, we cannot do everything, we cannot see everything. So we have an electronic arrangement system to see where we are at against the initial sector, for these sectors, physical, financial, and achievement, where we are at. So in terms of communication, as I said, as you rightly pointed out, we are not the one executing. We're just here to facilitate the implementation. It is up to the minister, to the policy makers to communicate. We provide them with enough elements for communication to flow. We can communicate on the reforms on what the government is doing, but the implementation rests with the minister or with the government, because we are here to support the implementation of government action. In Benin, we worked with civil society members that are carrying out impact assessment, who are totally independent from our impact, so for our system, to help us see what is reported to us tallies with the reality. I would like us to come back to those issues. So the government action plan, as we said, the 2/3 of it is to be achieved by the private sector. 4 out of the 9 billions, 2/3 should be funded by the private sector. Because for us, the government cannot create wealth if we are to transform our economies just only through structuring projects. And these, we have identified 45 structuring projects. So the action plan to us serves as investment opportunity for the private sector, whereby the government sets the conditions for implementation. Thank you so much for shedding light on the issue. We would like to actually give an opportunity to the audience to ask questions to the. So we're going to take 3 questions for time constraint. So we have question in the back. Please start introducing yourself before asking your question. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Abdoulaye Jane. I'm the national economist for UNDP in the Gambia. So I wanted to thank the panelists for your brilliant insights and interventions. It's been very enlightening as to how a delivery unit should work and success stories as to delivery units that have actually gotten things done. So my question was more on the structure of delivery units. I've heard a lot about what they should be doing, but I wanted to know what you found as a more effective structure, whether in terms of implementation and coordination, whether it was more effective to have a large delivery unit with sectoral experts and the like, or a smaller delivery units with more action-oriented people that were able to get things done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and welcome to UNDP Gambia. Oui, question.
Please introduce yourself. Thank you so much. Let me introduce myself. I am the chairwoman of the African Business Women Association. At the same time, I'm the coordinator of the International Federation of Families for Peace and Sustainable Development. My question is to find out whether the private sector can contribute to developing a delivery unit. Let me explain myself. Marketing of local products falls within the state, but there is a vacuum. Considering that products are perishing in the hands of producers, we, women leaders, we would like to build a partnership with the municipalities that are the state structures in order to organize women by developing local purchasing organization that actually produce local products. My question is to figure out whether the delivery unit is just with the state competence or can be expanded to the private sector. Maybe one last question. So we, for the sake of parity or gender balance, we'll have 2 ladies and 1 gentleman.
Yes.
My name is Aidan Getachew. I am from the Tony Blair Institute, the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. We actually work in around 14 countries in supporting governments to deliver on their priorities. And some of their panelists we have a program in. First of all, I would like to congratulate the Senegalese government for organizing this kind of platform. We're very keen to collaborate and work with you. My question is around the non-priorities. We always talk about the key priorities that governments need to focus on. Sometimes those priorities that were not included in the top flagship programs or in your top 3 or top 4 implementation strategies would fall apart and become your next headache. So how do you manage those non-priorities, if you allow me to say, to be monitored properly, are also being taken care of? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much and welcome to TBI. So 3 key questions I'm going to ask volunteers, maybe Mr. Jala for the first question about the structure, given your experience. As I said earlier, PEMANDU is quite a different model than the original delivery unit, which was established, in fact, by the Tony Blair administration back in the early 2000s. Could you reflect a bit on this, briefly on the right structure, and in the context of Africa, what is more suitable? Do we need a small, concentrated, focused team that is relying on the capability of the public service, of the line ministry, or do we have the PEMANDU model where you have a broader team with sectoral experts embedded in line ministries?
Thank you. The question about size to me, it's you do not begin designing your delivery unit until you are clear about what is it they're going to deliver. So in Malaysia, when we ran the labs, we know exactly the details of what we're going to deliver. One of the projects, for example, we want to build an oil and gas regional hub. It is Petronas that's going to spend $40 billion to build it. The government's job is to give the land. The government's job is to dig 3,000 graves and relocate them. The government job was to relocate 943 homes, example. Another one was we decided to build a mass rapid transit like the London Underground. So we knew how many lines we're going to build, how many underground tunnels are going to be built, how much is the cost, who is going to do that at that level of detail. When you have finished that, then you know the size of your delivery unit. Never decide the number by simply saying, I shall have 10. No, and no, and no. Run the labs in detail so that you know exactly the scope of work that is required, the types of people you need to put there. Never design the delivery unit size and scope unless you have the program. That is my strongest opinion and view on this issue, actually.
Very good, very good. So there's no good or bad answer, no good or wrong size. Yeah. It depends on the program, the reform program. Very good. Ibrahima, est-ce que tu veux reprendre?
Ibrahima, would you like to come back to the second question, which is quite relevant to question asked by the lady heading a Women Leaders Association? Can this model be replicated to the private sector? Yes, thank you so much. I would like to comment Madam the Chair and answer by yes. The principle of delivery unit is just an operational principle. As far as for Senegal, let me seize the opportunity to complement. In the portfolio that we are driving, there are private and public projects, and this private project is in the monitoring pipeline of the delivery unit. But more importantly, in the discussion that we engage with some partners that actually saw the effectiveness of the delivery unit for the project they're implementing, some of them are contemplating to put in place delivery unit. The principle of the delivery unit is that the state put its monitoring system. A ministry, a government structure can choose to have its delivery unit. Small, depending on the size and the goals that it wants to achieve, as Idrissa said earlier on, it can actually choose to put in place its delivery unit. I would like to suggest Mrs. Zhao to work with us in order to put up a delivery unit for her organization and a delivery unit for members of her organization. Brilliant. We have a new project in the pipeline.
This third question from TBI, interesting. In the process of prioritization, there are items which sort of fall under the radar. Does it mean that you no longer address them? In the case of the Big Four, family planning, for instance, is not on your list. Does it mean that the government of Kenya is no longer concerned about family planning? How do you address these those that are not in your top priorities? How do you handle this?
Tough one. It's a tough one. If we start at the beginning, you've gone through a prioritization process as to what is important to execute for that administration. It does not mean that the basic functions of government cease. Government continues to function. You have a Ministry of Health which must continue to execute its core mandate, and they must do. However, maybe what is important for the administration at that point in time is KPIs around maternal health care, mortality rates, access to affordable treatment for mothers. You know, maybe that's what is mission critical for the administration at that level. But it doesn't mean that the programs carried out by the line ministry stop. It's just what do you bring to the attention of your leader to focus decision making and also just to ensure that you don't lose sight of the goal that you're trying to achieve. It's very tempting to include everything in the heat of the moment. It's very tempting. And the political pressure will come to include everything as urgent and important. But you must be dispassionate and push back and say, look, this might not work because if we put too much attention on this, we don't have the bandwidth now to really focus on the important things. At the end of the day, all this work is done by human beings. They can only do so much. If you distract them, it will reflect in the quality of the outcome.
Can I add to that one?
Yes, very
thank you for raising the question. Actually, when we first started in Malaysia, we ran into tremendous resistance and arguments from the ministers who are looking after portfolio which was not on the national priorities. So we had a long discussion how to deal with this. This is how we dealt with it. So there are two sets of activities. We call them national priorities, which are the big ones. Then we have ministerial priorities. So we've said for the national priorities, we still will apply, and also the ministerial priorities, we will apply the modern tools. They need KPIs, they also need assessment, they also need reports, etc. Both of them, they need that. We go through the same process, but what happens is, because these are national priorities, they take the first bite at the budget and resources. We still assess what they do there. If you ask me very frankly, remember I told you the two types of delivery unit. The first type, the delivery unit, is the one that is mediocre in terms of results. For the non-priorities, I would say unashamedly, our approach for dealing with that, the ministerial priorities, is the mediocre approach. Light touch, we don't run the labs for them, and there we will just do a little bit of here and there. But the other ones, the national priority is heavy touch. We run the labs, we do the problem solving, we do the Putrajaya inquisition. We report the results of the ministers onto the website only for the national priorities, not for the ministerial priorities. When we did that, then it was okay. That's how we manage with.
Merci. Thank you very much for these contributions and insights. Voilà donc qui clôture.
That brings an end to this debate, to this discussion about the delivery unit. We have covered many aspects about what delivery units are, how they are functioning, what are the best practices in the area, what are the good and bad experiences in and outside of the continent, because we actually had heard from the rich experience of Kathmandu. Now we're going to conclude this section of the agenda by warmly thanking members of the panel who took their time to share their experience. Please, a round of applause to our panelists. Thank you so much for your contribution that are extremely rich. Now I'm turning to our host, Mr. Ibrahima Wad, for the way forward. I think Babakar is not far away.
Over to you, Babakar.
Merci bien. Merci Armand. Merci à nos chers panélistes pour les...
Thank you Armand. Thank you to our panelists for their brilliant contribution. Ladies and gentlemen, my take on this panel, it's the quote of New York Mayor who said that Politicians campaign in poetry and they will govern in prose. So difficult it is to materialize an economic vision. It is difficult to implement initiatives that impact on population's lives. But the good news in that is the fact of delivery units thriving everywhere. So that means that African government understood the challenge, and they are resolutely determined to take it up and achieve Africa's transformation and economic reassertion of the continent among the nations. Without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Ibrahima Wade, who will deliver the formal speech for launching the African Delivery Units Network. Mr. Wade, over to you.
Monsieur le ministre, chef de cabinet,
Honorable Minister, Chief of Staff and responsible for Kenyan Delivery Unit, Honorable Minister, Advisor to the President of the Republic, Macky Sall, Chair of the Scientific Committee of the Third International Conference on the Emergence of Africa, Mrs. Nyoku Diouf, whom I would like to pay tribute, the Chief of Staff of the Minister with the Republic President responsible for the monitoring of the Emerging Senegal Plan, PSC in French. So, Pemandu CEO, my dear friend Idriss Jalla, representative of the African Development Bank, my dear Armand, ladies and gentlemen representing the technical and financial partners, I would like to pay special tribute to the United Nations Development Program, through which we are here, the USAID, United States Agency for International Development, our partner right from the outset of the boss, the African Development Bank and the United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends representing the delivery units, representative of the private sector, dear partners and key players under the Emerging Senegal Plan, ladies and gentlemen representing the civil society, ladies and gentlemen director generals, so heads of departments, directors, ladies and gentlemen project managers of the PSC, whom I pay tribute for your decisive action that led to the commendable results today. All of them are present here. Ladies and gentlemen, dear participant, distinguished guests, with all protocols observed. In my capacity as Director General of the Operational Office for Monitoring the Emerging Senegal Plan, the Senegal Delivery Unit, please allow me right from the outset to extend my warm greetings to all my counterparts present here in this hall, to whom I thank you for gracing this important event gathering us today. You came from Benin, the Gambia, Ghana, Guinea, Kenya, Liberia, Madagascar, Malaysia, Morocco, Nigeria, Togo, and obviously from Senegal, to attend the formal launch of the African Delivery Units Network. These institutions established by our authorities and put at the highest institutional level to support emergence dynamics in Africa. You also came from the African Development Bank, from the United Nations Development Program, from the United Nations Funds, Populations Fund, from USAID, the World Bank, to support us with the beautiful journey that we're shaping today. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, dear distinguished participants, the third edition of the International Conference on the Emerging Africa that started 3 years ago helped to deepen the reflection and suggest countries' emergence plan, practical solution for stronger participation of the private sector, sustained by solid partnership with the government for strong, resilient, inclusive, and growth that enhances the potential of territories. The outcome of our deliberations will certainly feed into this beautiful harvest in that they will provide concrete solutions to the issue as how can we ensure an effective implementation of emergence plan in Africa. That is the reason why the second ICEA in 2017 in its final releases so advised the development of delivery units, the implementation and sharing the best practices are the way to support emergent effort initiated by African countries. The gathering before us in Diamniadio, in this beautiful emblematic place of the Senegal performance in achieving its emergence project, actually provide the development of an experience sharing platform in the area of best steering practices of economic transformation plans through the formal launch of the African Delivery Units Network, as I said earlier, in line with the recommendation by the second ICEA. The African Delivery Units Network will help build a formal framework to share the best practices, facilitate partnership in capacity development, and also watch the consistency of strategic guidance of development programs of member countries of this network. In this regard, the African Delivery Units Network considers a periodic publication of case studies and reflection on innovative solutions for implementing economic transformation programs in Africa. Furthermore, in the second quarter of 2019, the network will publish a document summarizing the bulk of a third ICA related to the issues regarding implementation of emergence program. Besides, the African Delivery Units Network will hold its next session in the third quarter of 2019 in Nairobi, Kenya, and I would like to thank my Kenyan colleague who kindly accepted to host us, the African Development Bank and the operational board for monitoring the PSE so that we can adopt a detailed roadmap and put in place governance structures. And actually Kenya that kindly accept to host the second meeting. That will be an opportunity for all of us to agree on the status that we revisited yesterday, and we're going to adopt them formally to sign the charter of the African Delivery Units Network and put in place the governance structure. So before concluding my remarks, I would like to seize this opportunity to extend my warm thanks to all managers of delivery units here present, as well as their teams for their roles played in the implementation of the emergence plan. Those are Mr. Idris Jala, CEO of Penambo, Professor Apia Adu, manager of the Ghana Delivery Unit, Mrs. Safiatou Diallo, advisor to the Guinea's Prime Minister, Mr. Zoka Voita, Minister of responsible for Kenya Delivery Unit, Mr. Trocon Pierre, Minister with the Liberian President, Ms. Joannes Dagnon, Special Advisor to the Benin President and Coordinator of the Investigation Analysis Office, Mr. Kanka Malik Nachaba, Manager of the Presidential Unit for Implementation of Togo, Dr. Alaji Nyangado, officer of the delivery unit in the Gambia, Mr. Ahmad Khalifa Ben Ahmad, advisor to the head of government and responsible for the monetary unit of the Morocco governmental plan, Mr. Omofo Alayande, responsible for Nigeria delivery unit, Mr. Solo Nyanda Andriana Pisowa, advisor to the Madagascar president, and Mr. Armand Zemana from the African Development Bank, and of course myself, that are founders of this African Delivery Units Network. I commend the preparatory work that was performed with a close collaboration of the African Development Bank Delivery Unit teams, whom I commend and I warmly thank. Please allow me to extend my greetings to Idris Jala, CEO of Kemandu, who played a key role in the economic transformation of Malaysia, and with whom the boss has forged a partnership in order to implement the very strong Malaysian methodology of the big, fast results through the labs on strategic reform project, as we talked about earlier on. Here also, it's about engaging in actually a new dynamic under the Emergency Economic Plan by learning from the best global practices. To all participants, to all who have come to attend the launch of the African Delivery Units Network, I would like to extend my sincere appreciation. On behalf of my colleagues, I declare the African Delivery Units Network launch on Saturday, January the 19th, 2019 in Diamniadio, and thank you for your kind attention.
Mesdames et messieurs, pour clôturer cette
To close this working session on delivery units, I'm going to invite the delivery units that are present to join us on the Presidium for an official photo which will close our working session. The closing ceremony will be done in midday at the Oval Room at the first floor. Without further ado, I call upon all managers of delivery units to come and join us. Professor Apia Ado from Ghana, Madam Safiatou Diallo from Guinea, Waita is already here, Kipi Tranco from Liberia, Juaneth Daniel from Benin, who is already on stage, Malik Machabo is already on stage, Alaji Nyangado from the Gambia, Omo Folarin Ayalande from Nigeria, Mr. Diallo is already on stage, and Solo Nyana from Madagascar.
Merci, mesdames et messieurs, pour votre présence un samedi matin.
Thank you. For the closing ceremony, it's at midday at the Oval Room at the first floor under the chairmanship of the Prime Minister of Senegal. Thank you. Thank you and see you soon. Enjoy your weekend.
C'est ce que j'ai dit, ça l'oval au premier étage.
gonna hurt now if you open up your eyes. You're making it worse now every time you criticize. I'm under your curse now, but I call it compromise. I thought that you were wise, but you were otherwise. A specimen like you, I would love to obtain. I asked the tedious guy if you tell me your name. I'd love to impress you with the backs of my soul. I wanna take out your love, but it's locked in a vault. I wanna take out your love, but it's locked in a vault. It ain't gonna hurt now if you open up your eyes. You're making it worse now every time you criticize. I'm under your curse now, but I call it compromise. I thought that you were wise, but you were otherwise. When I open my mouth, I'm so brutally honest, and I can't expect that kind of love from you. When you open your mouth, your teeth are beautifully polished, and I can't extract the pain you're going through. No, I can't explain the pain you're going through. It ain't gonna hurt now if you open up your eyes. You're making it worse now every time you womanize. I'm under your curse now, but I call it compromise. I'm under your curse. It ain't gonna hurt now if you open up your eyes. You're making like dynamite.